What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Shooting the Shit Uncensored. This is a special live Sunday night edition, and we got a very, very special guest. We got the one, the only, Tox, Bad Luck Fale in the house, and I'm excited to have him in here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. But before we go any further, I need to take a quick second to tell you about one of our amazing sponsors, and that is healthvape.com. Now, Health Vape is your healthy vaping alternative. All of their products, no nicotine, no addictive or harmful chemicals. They help you restore your energy while giving you the vital boost you need to get through your day. Guys, these are also vitamin infused, so it's like vaping a freaking Red Bull, believe it or not. So go and check out all their Vape and Pod products. Use that promo code MWAPOD to get a 10% discount at your final purchase. Also, wherever you're tuning in for this episode, I appreciate it. If you're tuning in on YouTube, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell to stay notified, share to your best friends, your neighbors, your cousins, your aunties, your uncles, your enemies, everyone. Just share it around. If you're listening on a podcast platform, please give us a 5-star review. It helps us bring more amazing conversations to more amazing fucking people like yourselves. So get to clicking and get to tapping in. And I appreciate it. But without further ado, I'm excited. I'm pumped for this episode. So let's get into it. My conversation with Tox, Bad Luck Fale. Let's go, baby! And here we are with the man of the hour himself, Tox, Bad Luck Fale. Welcome to the show. Appreciate you being on, brother.
Yeah, thanks, Piers. Good to be here.
Yeah, man, absolutely, man. It was interesting. Like, as we sort of like teed up this interview, I went and did a little bit of research, man, and surprisingly enough, you don't do many of these. You don't do many interviews and very many podcasts. So I definitely feel honored to have you to be on the show and choosing to be on this platform. I greatly appreciate it, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners do as well. So just wanted to get that out of the way, and thank you for that. But man, like, getting straight into it, like, New Japan Pro Wrestling, starting to do more and more shows here in Australia with, Tamashii, launching and shows being done all over Australia and also in NZ as well, I believe, and you've pretty much been at the forefront of that. How important was this for you to launch? Because I've heard like this is almost like a passion project for you almost.
Yeah, it's true. This is my passion and something I've been working towards ever since 2013, and very important because I realized after finishing rugby and having nothing to show for it that I needed a backup plan if I was going to get into wrestling. So, if I ever finished wrestling in the ring, then I have something to fall back on, and that's promoting and running the school.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you talk about being a rugby player and, you were actually signed to actually be over in Japan prior to, wrestling and getting involved in the wrestling business. And you were playing professional rugby for a Japanese club here, for yourself, like going from, being living in Auckland, New Zealand, and then making the move over to Japan as a young man. How did you find that as a culture shock? Because I can imagine the New Zealand lifestyle very similar to the Australian lifestyle to a certain extent, and then going to Japan, which would probably be like the extreme opposite in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I'd say it's more of a shock. If the young people today was back alive back then, we didn't have internet, we didn't have Facebook or Twitter to really know what other countries look like, and went to Japan when I was 18, and all I knew was, some of the movies that I've watched about Japan and Samurais and Tokyo. And in my head, getting off the plane in Japan, in my head, for some reason, I was going to get out and see everybody in kimonos and samurai swords. And I
You're
was,
expecting it to be like, the Karate
yeah,
Kid, where they're opening like the sliding doors in every house and stuff, right?
that's what I was shocked. I got there and I thought, man, these people are really advanced.
Oh
But
man, absolutely.
to show how ignorant we were, back then. Not if you don't travel, you don't see the world. But now we can see everything on the internet. So
But I feel like that's like you even like when I speak to a lot of Americans and stuff like that, and some of them are like, "Yeah, do you like have kangaroos like hopping down like it's like main streets and stuff?" Like, you know what I mean? Like they literally think Australia is all outback, right? So I think it's the perception of what they see. Like some people see Crocodile Dundee one too many times and have this perception of what Australia is like. And it's like, yeah, no, probably like
yeah,
that maybe in the
I must admit, before I came to Australia, I thought the same. I thought everywhere.
Yeah, right. Yeah, man. Like, well, there you go. Like, I think it's the perception and stuff like that, and how the media like represents certain like cultures and countries, right? So, you know, how did you find like the communication barrier as well? Like when you went over there, like speaking that everyone's speaking a different language to you and being something completely different. Did you find it hard to sort of like pick the Japanese language up because it's a very different, like difficult language to learn, right?
Yeah, it was funny because I went there with a Samoan teammate and a Maori teammate and a New Zealand teammate. So it was interesting going there together because we all had our own struggles and trying to learn the language. But it was kind of, I'd say, more easier for me because the tonation of Japanese is very similar to Tongan. So
Mm.
I picked it up easier than other guys. But it was very hard at first because you're trying to understand what they're saying, and all you know is what you've seen in the movies and Karate Kid, Miyagi, and all that kind of stuff. But it's very difficult. It's not just Japanese. If you try to learn any language, it's gonna be the same. It's gonna be hard.
Oh yeah, it is as well. I think especially like when you start learning it as an adult. Like I think like when if you're bilingual and you're learning that from like a young age, like from the moment
Yeah,
you start talking, then it's like it just becomes fluent for you, right? Like just it's like nothing. But I feel like as an adult, you start learning stuff, it's much harder.
yeah. For us as adults, it's we've got rules already in place in our heads where we can't. It's hard for us to bend those rules to try and learn that other language. Whereas kids, they don't give a they if shit,
You can
they don't
swear, it's okay.
they don't give a fuck. So yeah, so when they learn languages, they pick it up so quick because they don't have to have certain rules to stop them from trying to learn. So that's why they pick it up so easy. And I've seen some of my teammates bring their kids and they learn it in like a matter of months.
Yeah, that's crazy. But like when you were like playing, how like was there a lot of expats playing in that competition, or was it mainly a majority of Japanese players there?
Majority Japanese, and back then you hardly had any foreigners, and the only foreigners you'd have there were the actual top names you would see back in New Zealand, Australia, and
Mm.
all over. Now anybody can go straight from school, go straight from club rugby, but back then it was really rare to have foreigners in these teams.
Yeah, right. And because it's from what my understanding was like is in Japan, it's like it's not like other countries where you've got like states and provinces which have their teams and then you've got local clubs and stuff like that. It's like companies have their own rugby teams like Samsung or like I don't know, like a Japanese team, Mitsubishi, for example, would have the
Yeah,
Mitsubishi team and then they play against the LG team or whatever it may be. Is that the actual case over there?
yeah, it's very interesting because it helps players after rugby because most of them, the Japanese, I'd say 90% of them sign up as employees for the
Mm.
company. So they have to work from 9 to 12, and then from 12 to 6 p.m., they're rugby players. So they have half the day and then play rugby half the day until they retire. Once they retire, they've already got a job set, for the rest of their lives, and that's how
Yeah.
the system over there works, which is pretty good, I think, because I see a lot of ex rugby players, man, just struggling to find jobs and all that. It's
Mm.
it's it's a pretty cool system, and I think it should do stuff like that here.
I agree because you see, like, a lot of like ex rugby league players and ex rugby union players, like after they get out of that sport and out of that limelight, like a lot of them struggle. And you see, like,
Yeah.
certain guys go through bankruptcy, drug addiction,
Yes.
alcoholism, and all this sort of stuff because they're put in this system at such a young age where it's like all you have to do is just go and do this one thing, go and train, play football, drink as much as you want. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the culture in rugby for a certain extent, right?
Because I went for it myself. The whole reason I got into wrestling is because I was at that low end of it. After rugby, I was depressed, suicidal. I can say that now. But I was lucky people around me who helped me and showed me this new, hey, want to try this? Yeah, I will try it and made it. And that's links to what I'm doing now because a lot of the things I'm doing, like my school and the Tamashii right now, is offering another pathway because I understand these guys who go through rugby and league and other pro sports. When you're out, it's very tough to survive because you've lived this life for 20, 25 years and you have to go back and find a proper job. But what I'm working on is offering that to those type of people. They're already pros. All I have to teach them is how to wrestle. So one of the reasons I opened my school is to target those kind of guys because a lot of my friends who went for the same thing, unfortunately, some of them did take their lives because they couldn't handle that kind of stuff. So that was part of the reason opening up school, starting another promotion, giving these guys another pathway to make the same type of money, still keep that fame, and move forward.
Yeah, because that like that's a big thing as well. Like when you're used to being like a certain level of a celebrity and having that recognition, and that starts to fade away as well. Like that would be like a very very like bring you back down to earth type of experience, right?
Tough. It's tough because it's your pride. It's your pride that really does that to you. I was lucky enough to go through it in rugby, and when rugby was finished, it took a big hit on my pride, but I fought back, and now I understand it. So, especially in wrestling, because when you're a champion for a long time, you get the push, whatever, and then they take that away from you. Somebody younger, somebody more famous comes along. You really are depressed after that, and you're fighting to try to get back to that point, but it's very hard. So I, I'd say because I went through that in rugby, it's easier for me in wrestling now that even though I don't get a push or I'm not in the front or I'm not a champion, I
Mm.
can handle that because I've been through it. So it's very tough, very tough.
How did the introduction to wrestling come? Because like you're talking about like your rugby career coming to an end and then people around you like introducing you to this, but like who was the people that actually sort of opened the doors for you to wrestling over in Japan and New Japan and so forth?
Man, very funny story because I had a friend of mine who was a sumo wrestler. He was wrestling as a sumo wrestler for 7 years, and he was coming around to retiring from it, and they gave him an opportunity to go and try out for New Japan. I had no idea who New Japan was or whatever pro wrestling was. I had watched wrestling in the '90s, the early 2000s, and the Attitude Era, but that's all I knew. All I knew was the American style, and that's it. But when my friend said, "Hey, I'm going to try out for this wrestling company, you should come along," and me being very ignorant, thinking, "Oh, I'm finished from rugby. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be as hard as rugby." So
Yeah.
I went to try out and quickly found out it's not the case because in
Like did your mindset going into that though, like were you thinking, oh look, as you said, it's not going to be hard as rugby. I'm going to go in there. I'm going to like show these guys how athletic I am, how good my cardio is for a big guy. They're going to be so impressed, and I'm going to go straight to the top.
That's exactly how I thought. That's what I thought. I went in there thinking I was better than everyone, but right from the tryout, I realized, man, how tough the sport is, and I was humbled. Literally, I was humbled during training where I couldn't complete 99% of the things they made me do.
Wow. Who was who was running the tryout? Like, who was putting you through the paces? Do you remember?
With the New Japan tryout, they have anything from between one person to 20 people, whoever's there. But the thing is, at the New Japan dojo, everybody comes into training. It doesn't matter if you're champion or you're a young lion, everyone comes in there. Compare that to some other school companies, if only young people train here or young people train there. But in Japan, however many people are there during the tryout, they all become your selectors. Yeah. So everybody was there. I remember Fale was there. I was actually kind of happy when I walked in there and I saw this white guy standing at the back. I'm thinking, oh, I've got an ally. It gave me some pleasure seeing him there because it was very intimidating. All these big guys and muscular athletes, nowhere compared to any rugby players. Rugby players are big, but they're only wrestlers. And when you see wrestlers, you're like, man, this is a different type of world.
Well, it's different bodies to I think professional wrestling, like the body sizes has definitely changed. Like everyone can be whatever size and body shape, right? But like the traditional thought of like what a professional wrestler looks like, big, jack, six pack, like muscled as fuck. And then like rugby players who have these big, bulky builds, but their muscles are built for they're not really built for show. They're built for being like front rowers or, forwards and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because Japan, what they want is the old school, bulky looking guys like me, But it's hard to find guys like us anymore. So they have to rely on slim six packs, high flying guys, which is good. But at the same time, when I got into the business, some of my older elders told me, you got to look like a wrestler. I remember the first time I walked in there for the tryout, and Nagata grabs me and he goes, oh, you're a big guy, but we'll build you a better body. And in my head, I'm thinking, I'm a rugby player. I've got a big build. I look bigger than most guys. Yeah. And I didn't understand until later on what he really meant was you got to look like a wrestler. And I remember, I think it was Diesel said one time, when he was partnered with Shawn Michaels, Diesel would say, he may be the champion, but when we walk through the airport, guess who everybody's looking at?
Yeah, I remember hearing that. Yeah, exactly. Because he's eye-catching.
Yeah, it's all about the image. It's all about the presence. Because when I walk around, people don't see me as a rugby player. Straight away, they'll say, hey, that's that wrestler. Mm. And a lot of guys, even little small guys who I work with, you can tell they're wrestlers. For example, Ishii. Ishii is not a very tall guy, but when you see him, you can tell this guy's a wrestler because you don't want to mess with that guy. But that's and I understood what Nagata was talking about. You got to look like a wrestler. If you want to be a wrestler, you got to look like it. There's also the saying of the helmet football players. You get what that what's the saying? You only know a football player in the nightclub because they're the ones who are spending thousands of dollars at the bar or whatever. Because without their helmets, nobody knows who they are. And it's the same. You may look cool in the ring, you may do all these fancy moves and stuff, but out in public, if nobody knows you, it defeats the purpose of being a wrestler.
Yeah, no, 100% right. And like for you, like you go do the tryout, straight away, like after that tryout, were you like signed automatically and sent to the dojo to start training? Like where did the process go from after that tryout?
So I left there thinking I had failed all of it because I couldn't complete the squats. I couldn't complete the push-ups or pull-ups and all the stuff they gave me. I'd say 99% of the exercises they gave me I didn't complete. So I walked out of that. I was happy with myself because I went. I wasn't happy with myself because I didn't complete anything. But I thought to myself, I did it. I can say I've done it. Whatever happens, what happens. Went home, maybe 2 or 3 days later, I get the call, and we had about 20 something people trying out. And they told me, hey, you're the only one we want. It's very surprising to me because I thought I had failed everything, and why would they pick me? I did ask them later on why they picked me because I was the only one who didn't finish all these things, and that made sense. They said you're the only one who never gave up. There's some people who would last longer than me; they would give up or whatever. But they said you're the only one who never gave up. And I asked them why, what that meant, and what they mean is, of course, in the ring, how many people have we had pass away in the ring from different moves and spots? And we're looking for people who don't give up when their legs are shaking, and you got somebody in a very dangerous move, and your legs are saying, "I can't take this." We want people who won't give up,
You
and
got
that
to have
may
that heart.
be because the sport is not just what you see on TV. This is one of the most dangerous sports in the world. And a lot of people talk about how fake it is and whatever. Yeah, you can say that, but show me another sport where a lot of people die. Not as much as wrestling.
And that's where I feel like, as you said, people say that the fake word about professional wrestling, and it really doesn't sit well with me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm at a lot of shows, like a majority of my weekend, so I'm seeing a lot of people I've become friends with putting their bodies on the line, doing certain things, and sometimes getting injured and having significant injuries. And then when I hear people that don't really know the business or respect it call it fake, I'm just like, it makes my stomach turn a little bit, and it's just like, oh, like, really, like, it's almost it's offensive in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? Like, and a lot of wrestlers take offense to it as well,
No, we
as they
do.
should.
Yeah, they don't understand what we go through and the hardships we have to go through and to travel. It's not easy traveling also, man. It's not just in the ring. A lot of people get depressed and end up committing suicide because they're away from their family, away from their kids for sometimes months on end. It's very hard. Imagine back in the day when they had no internet. Well, now you can
Well,
see your family
on
on.
mobile phones. You know what I mean? Like,
Imagine how tough it was for the guys back in the day where they only had a phone call, and they can't fly everywhere all the time, so they have to live in territories for months to a year, even plus, without seeing their family and kids. So it's very tough.
yeah, and like, I think that like, I've had conversations with other wrestlers from like past eras of the 80s and 90s, and one of the consensus that they always agree on is that they believe a lot of like of the drug abuse and alcoholism that's happened in the business of professional wrestling stems from guys that are like, they're away from their families long periods of time, they're missing their children take their first steps, or have these like very special moments in families' lives, or their wife leaves them, and you know what I mean, like they're 100 miles away and they can't deal with it. So a lot of times it's obviously that what they were saying is to escape reality for the most part from what they were doing.
And that's true. That's 100% true. A lot of guys pass away because even trying to stay awake. In the different countries, different time zones. You have when you're main eventing and you're supposed to be asleep at that time. Sometimes these guys have to take medicine to stay awake or medicine to sleep, and that's how you get addicted, trying to work out time zones and stuff. And that's it, man. It's a very tough life mentally, physically, but mostly mentally. It's very tough. And a lot of people who come and train with me, don't end up completing because they can't handle the type of training. In New Japan, the training is very tough for a reason because they want to build guys with mental toughness. They don't care what your bodies look like, but if your mind can tell your body to keep going, that's what they're looking for. And if you're mentally tough, you can handle these trips. You can wake yourself up. You can go to sleep when you need to, and still travel and still do these matches without without reverting to drugs.
Yeah. How hard was the dojo, like, once you went in there and started training? Like, how hard was that for you? Because, like, I've heard, like, certain stories where it's like you were pretty much like a slave to them, like, as far as like it being like a young boy going there, the cleaning, the cooking, all that sort of stuff, like barely being I think I heard, like, in some interviews in the past from some people, as like you weren't even allowed to go outside at certain times, or can you talk about that for me?
Yeah, they have a tradition where the first day you enter the dojo as a young lion, you shave your head, right? And that you only do it once. It's a tradition that they started right from the beginning, and it's still going. So when I went in there, I shaved my head, and this is how tough it is. My hair never grew back. That's how stressed and how tough the training was. Ever since then, my hair never grew back. It grows back, but not the way I like
Same here.
it.
Well, not for the same reason, but yeah, I get you.
That's what I mean. Like, of course, my family has, bald-headed, my brothers and of course my dad, but most of them lose it in their mid 30s, late 30s. I was still in my 20s. I was 29, so when I shaved it and went through that training, it never grew back proper because I was so stressed out and so mentally exhausted. But it's very tough over there because I believe up until today, till today, I mean, I'm still the only foreigner who's done it 100% as a young lion. The guys who have come close, I'd say maybe Jay White and Hikuleo and Henare, but I'm not sure. Maybe a few guys after that, but 100%, I can still say nobody's gone to my level because nobody speaks Japanese yet.
Do you feel like, you said like you were feeling very stressed and pressure and everything like that going through there? What was the thing that was stressing you out the most? Was it like thinking, this is my last opportunity to do something as an athlete in my life? Do I have to go back home? Do I have to get, like, what was it that was stressing you out the most?
That was all part of it. One of my main driving factors is that I was told I couldn't do it. I became the first foreigner to complete it because I wanted to prove people wrong, especially the Japanese. Because once I made that tryout and got in, the rugby media ran with it because they've never had a rugby player back in the 60s, I think. But it's a foreigner rugby player getting into a New Japan Pro Wrestling, the biggest and most famous one in Japan. And once that media thing went out, I had all the messages coming in saying, Japanese guys can't even do it. Why do you think a foreigner can? And that just lit a freaking fire under my. And I said to everyone, you know what? I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna do this, and I won't give a fuck. So that meant swallowing my pride or leaving my pride outside the door and doing everything that the Japanese were doing because once while I was in there, they still try to give me special treatment because I was a foreigner, but I
Yeah.
refused. When they say 1,000 squats, Fale, maybe you do 300 because you're big. I said okay, and I just go stand next to the Japanese and do 1,000 with them, and that's how you become part of it. And they saw me as a Japanese because I did all that stuff. Because if they see you as a foreigner coming in to train, they're going to treat you as a foreigner, and the level of respect is very different. If you're seen as a Japanese, they'll respect you like a Japanese. But if you're a foreigner, they'll see you as a foreigner and respect you as a foreigner. But it's not as good as being Japanese.
Did you feel like at the start of your training that they did go harder on you because you were coming from that rugby world? Did you feel like that he tried to break you at any point? Because, like, you hear the stories of, like, back in the day with wrestling trainers and stuff like that, that have someone come in, it's like, all right, what I mean? Like, they try and blow them up, then stretch them out. And, what I mean? Like, did you feel like they tried to push you to your limits to try and push you out of the business at the start?
I did. Um, but the thing is, they do it to everyone. There's no favoritism. If 20 guys came in as young lions, they'll try and get rid of all 20 and see who's tough enough to stick around. Which, like I said, if you're a foreigner, they'll give you an easy time. But I
Mm.
didn't want. I wanted them to see me as Japanese. So whatever they whatever they did to the Japanese, I made sure I wanted to be part of it. When they were slapping Japanese around, I stood right next to them so I can get slapped because I wanted to show them, hey, I want this. This is what I want. And
Mm.
then they saw me as Japanese, treated me like one, and respecting me like one.
Yeah. And that's a big thing, like getting that respect from them as well, because like the Japanese culture is very, very like based on respect for a lot of like for the most part of it as well. I don't know how many people would want to step to you, Fale, and want to slap you. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to be one of those people that want to put my hand up for that job. But as far as then, like going through that dojo process, like who was like some of the names that you were training with in there at that time?
Oh man, I had everyone. I had Shinsuke Nakamura, I had Nagata, we had Liga. Man, pretty much everyone. Tanahashi would come in sometimes. Makabe would be there. Jaro, Gero, Izuka, Goto. Man, pretty much everyone was there helping us out. Um, Carl Anderson, yeah. Bale, Finn Balor. That's the beauty about the New Japan Dojo is you got all the top guys helping you become a wrestler. Where it's very tough, and like other companies, it's hard to get one of the top guys to come around and give you a hand or whatever, show you the ropes. Well, I was lucky. I was so lucky because I got young lions in Japan are lucky because they get to learn from everybody.
And I suppose
And
it's good as well being. I suppose it's good as well being a foreigner and having like other foreigners who are the top stars coming in as well, where it's like it's just another person who's like on the same like communication level as you know what I mean? Like speaking English, that sort of thing. Is like, especially in a country which is so like I said, speaking a completely opposite language to what you're mainly used to.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah. How did so like making your debut in New Japan Pro Wrestling? Like because I think like you started training in 2009, 2010 you made your debut. Um how did you feel going into that first match?
Very, very scary. And not many people know this in Japan. They don't teach you how to do pro wrestling until you get in the ring. Where I never learned how to do a lockup until 2 weeks before I debuted. When they said you're debuting, go ask Carl Anderson to teach you how to lock up.
Oh wow.
It's honest truth. At the time, the guy I debuted against was Nakanishi Manabu. And at that time, because that guy was I think a bronze medalist wrestler in the Olympics, and that guy he was about what 41, 42 at the time, best physique you'd ever see from a big guy. He was 140 kilos, and they made me debut against him in front of 2,000 people at Korak Grand Hall, and I had no idea how to wrestle. So this guy beat the shit out of me. I couldn't eat for a week after that because my jaw was like this.
Because you debuted as King Fale, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right. Like, what was like? Who came up with the King Fale gimmick? Was that like over there? Like, did they give you enough? Like, did it give you the freedom to come up with your own gimmick and character?
Because King Haku was really well known in Japan, they gave it to the what do you call it? When they announced I was debuting, they made it a fanfare where fans can send them names where they think where I can have a look at all these names and choose one from them. So most most of the names that came up was had a king on it, just because King Haku was you know from Japan and wrestled in Japan. So I just went with King, King Fale.
Yeah, and like I think you wrestled for a little while as King Fale, but then they changed it up to Bad Luck Fale shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I think they shortly when they actually debuted you as Bad Luck Fale, that's when they partnered you up Fergal Devitt, Finn Balor, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So 2 years I wrestled as a young lion, as King Fale, and when they sent me to America on my excursion, I went in 2012, and then came back in 2013 and teamed up with Fergal.
How was the US excursion for you? Like, was that your first time going to the States?
Yeah, it was the first time. It was very, like I said, same as Japan. It was a very big culture shock to me because I thought everybody was going to have cowboy hats and
Just swirling guns on their finger and shit.
like boys and the horses. I'm joking. But yeah, I ended up going to St. Louis, Missouri, and I lived with Tony Cozina over there. So freaking scary. Meaning, I lived right where the most scariest part of St. Louis was, and easily one of the top 5 murders in the city, places in the world, in
Wow.
America. So I was literally hearing gunshots outside my door pretty much every night. But what a place to go and learn your trade, huh?
That's intense though. Like that would be a bigger culture shock than like at that point you're probably going, just take me back to Japan. I'll deal with everything else there.
Because I also joined the local rugby team just to keep fit.
Yeah.
And half the team were criminals and half the team were cops. So there was, but I was there for 2 weeks. Third week, or I think one of the guys asked me, so Fale, how do you find St. Louis? You okay with all this, this danger and stuff? And I said, what are you talking about? I'm having a great time. So he goes, go home and watch the news tonight. Went home, watched the news, and saw how many stories of murders just outside my living area on the street. There's a couple of murders just on that day. And I went back to them. I said, man, I don't really want to go outside.
I mean, like, while you're in the US, like, whereabouts were you wrestling? Like, what promotions did you go around? Like, were you based in St. Louis and you went all around the States, or was it just mainly?
Over, I can't remember most of them. I know I did uh, uh, Texas. There's a few places in Texas I went to. There's places in California, I think. Chicago, Michigan. It was just all over the place. But the sad thing was I was there to learn, but when I was there, most of the bookings I got were monster squash matches, so I didn't learn much. It was really sad. At the same time, I was supposed to be working with TNA at the time, but that's it. I went there just when they kind of died.
Because I think around that time they had the like New Japan had a relationship with TNA, and they
Yeah,
had like, I think Kurt
yeah,
Angle was the the New Japan
yeah,
champion.
yeah. I think Okada was because when Okada came back to Japan, that's when it was my turn to go on excursion.
Mm. But going back there and then teaming up with Fergal Devitt, like, or Prince Devitt, or Finn Balor, how did you find that pairing, and who came up with the idea of putting you two together?
Oh well, so from my understanding, I was told that David was thinking of leaving the company, and he was just tired of doing the same old thing as a junior and junior champ and stuff. So I think in order to keep him happy and keep him interested in staying, they wanted to move him to heavyweight. So, but in order for him to become a heavyweight, they needed, like somebody like Diesel and Shawn Michaels. So at the time, I was the only big guy around at the time doing nothing. So they called and said, "You want to do this?" Because I still had one more year left on my excursion, but I said, you know what, just don't. I didn't want to stay in that dangerous area another year.
Yeah, I didn't want to hear the gunshots anymore while you're falling asleep. But like, I really feel like that partnership with you and Prince or Finn Balor, really worked well because it's like shortly thereafter that, like the promos that sort of led towards the Bullet Club, I feel like really showed the world how talented like Finn Balor was. And I think that was probably the catalyst of really sort of getting eyes on him from like WWE, etc. Because it's like you go back and watch those promos and stuff, and even the matches he was having, like he was on fire at that time. Like I think like he was running on all cylinders, and then starting that and then being close to that and learning from that for you,
Oh, yeah.
such a valuable position for you to be in, right?
Yeah, of course. When I went to New Japan, he was basically the only foreigner there, and then Carl Anderson came. Yeah, so I was really happy when they said come back and join him, do something with him. I was really happy because I did see it as a learning opportunity for me because man, he's been in it for a while, and I was just starting up. But in my head, I'm thinking I can just tag along and learn everything he's doing while he's doing his matches and stuff, and I did. And he was nice enough to help me out and show me the ropes here and there. But yeah, it was unfortunate he had to go, but I did learn as much as I could for the 1 year that he was there before he left.
And with the Bullet Club formation, because like the original idea for Bullet Club, and correct me if I'm wrong here, was it was going to be all gaijin, right? So it was going to be all foreigners part of this one stable. Did you expect or did you see Bullet Club blowing up as much as it has and done, like originally when it started?
No, no, we did not. We did not. But I think it all it really did begin when I came out and joined David because the amount of heat that we got had never been seen in Japan. Because literally the next day, our president told us, "You guys be careful because there's people who literally want to kill you because
Oh,
never seen foreigners do that in Japan." So the heat was real. Like they were getting complaints and calls to the office wanting them to fire us. And it, for them, it usually takes up to 1 or 2 years to build a heel faction or whatever. We didn't, and that's why they escalated it to okay, in a month we're gonna do all the foreigners together because there's so much heat. They wanted to act on
like when did like Bullet Club start making it like is like Bullet Club was obviously originally a heel stable, but when did it start making a turn? Because I feel like you guys didn't really change what you were doing, but it kind of like organically turned and you guys started getting babyface reactions, and then obviously the split with Bullet Club having the US side of it and then the Japanese side of it as well. How did you guys sort of start to feel when you did start seeing the 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 pendulum starting to shift, so to speak, and it's starting to lean towards being faces and then heels?
it. Yeah, it helped a lot. Um, if we all just stayed as bad guys and nobody's going to support us, we won't blow up as much. If people wanted to cheer for us, we don't react to it, no one's going to cheer for us again. So we had to battle that fine line of trying to stay as heels, but at the same time acknowledge the cheering and stuff, so we can get more support. But it wasn't. I'd have to say when we started adding more American guys, then that's when it started looking cool. And because especially when Gallows came along, when Gallows came along, that guy, his style is so freaking funny and awesome that you can't help but react the way you do. Man, this guy's just having fun out there and stuff. And then you have the Bucks coming in, and they just want to have fun out there, and it just turned into a big party for us because we would go and hang out at night, enjoy drinks, whatever, and then we'll be in the ring just talking to each other exactly how we did the night before, and our matches showed. If you had fun in doing your job, people are gonna be gravitated to it. But if you're in there doing it and you don't like it, it's not gonna show.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like, I think it projects out, like when you see someone putting like it. any form of content or entertainment out there, if the person's phoning it in, like the audience is going to pick that up very quickly.
Yeah, that's so true.
But like, as far as like with Bullet Club, you guys have seen a lot of members come in and go out of that faction over the years. Have you guys, like, did you all have like a certain say on who can come into the faction? Like, would New Japan say, hey, we're thinking about bringing in this person? Did you guys get that sort of luxury of, being able to have the opportunity to say no or yes to certain people?
We did. At the same time, we were able to suggest. We couldn't say this guy's coming because people need to know that this is not just a faction. It's not cheap to fly people in. It's not cheap to have hotels everywhere. It's not cheap to take a group of guys everywhere. So you have to pick and choose. Who's available, who's not available. So those were the type of questions we were asked. If we said, can we bring this guy in? They would say, how much, man, we'll weigh the options, because this guy might cost $1 million, or this guy might only cost $30,000. Let's go with that one because he's cheaper, that kind of stuff. So, but everyone came in, did their job, especially. So David took us to a really great place. But I think when AJ Styles came in, it was just a whole different level. That's when. Yeah, so. I think David missed out on the peak. So AJ Styles came in and took us to the peak, which is when everything just blew up.
Well, do you think as well, like when AJ came in, because AJ was such a big name in the United States, like him coming in and joining Bullet Club, do you think that put a lot of more international eyes on that brand and on that sort of action?
Of course, I don't deny it. And everybody had their own followings, and Twitter was fairly new. Everybody already had their own followings, but when everybody came together, and here's the secret: we all decided that we'd go out and have fun in our gears. You don't see wrestlers go out and wear their own merchandise when they're going out, right? So we've asked the office to come up with designs that we can wear up to a nightclub. If I can wear this to a nightclub, I'm not wearing it, right? Because people, when they see a wrestling shirt, they go, oh, you know how it is. Oh, a wrestling fan. But we decided, hey, let's get designs that we like. We can wear wherever we want to go. Together, we take photos every time we get some new one as a group, as a team, and I'm sure you've seen it. If you search Bullet Club, there's always a faction photo of everybody with a shirt on.
Yeah.
And we had another one of our rules or things we had to do was share it, because Facebook and Instagram and Twitter were still fairly new. Not many people were on it, but we shared that on all our social medias. It was kind of like we were like on the forefront of using social media as a marketing tool, and that's why that shirt and that design just blew up even before New Japan came to America. Because for 1 or 2 years, I remember myself and Carl Anderson trying to force the office to give us more or push us more or take us to America or whatever, because this thing needs to be all over the world, because the rest of the world knows already. But they didn't see it because they only saw Japan. It wasn't until 2014 or 15 they had the first New Japan show in New York. And it was funny, they went there, but the foreigners weren't invited. It was just the ROH and what do you call it, a New Japan show. And sorry,
was that the one at Madison Square Garden?
I'm not sure. I can't remember. But I think that's when Lance Archer made his debut for New Japan there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, or one of those. But I remember when they came back and the president comes over to me, myself, and Anderson, like with a big smile saying, man, I can't believe Bullet Club is in America. There was people with shirts all over the crowd. And we were looking at each other going, we told you this. We told you this.
It's over. It's
Yeah,
funny. I remember like years ago, I was out at a bar and I saw someone with a Bullet Club shirt on, and I was like, "Oh, cool, man! Like you watch New Japan." And this person looked at me and went, "What? What's New Japan?" I go,
yes.
Bullet Club," and he's like, "Uh, uh, what?" And I'm like, "It's a wrestling shirt, bro." Like, and he's like, "Oh, I thought this was a band. I just thought it was a cool shirt I saw and just and bought it online." I'm like, "Fuck, that's some good marketing."
Yeah, exactly. I can't remember what country it was, but I saw somebody with the hat. And I went over to him. I said, nice hat, bro. And he goes, oh, thank you. He kept walking. I thought, there you go. That's what we wanted. Just you can wear anywhere.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's where you know you're winning when like people that are non-wrestling fans are buying the merch to
Yeah.
wear it. You know what I mean? So it's like that's when you're tapping into it. But with Bullet Club though, like the elite faction of Bullet Club when they did their all out all in pay-per-view, was there any like feeling, because I think that was around the time just around then when they made the split and departure from Bullet
Yeah.
Club and New Japan, was there any sort of like disappointment from you and like Tamatonga, Tangaloa, and the rest of the New Japan faction of the Bullet Club, because you guys weren't involved in that show, which I thought was pretty surprising, given the connection there with you guys.
Yeah, of course. This is one of the things I've never talked about is, of course, we were hurt because, like any other thing, you're taking the bread off our table, right? That's our
Mm,
bread and butter, and we fought for years to build that brand, and then you have a couple of guys go over from overseas and steal it off us, right? That hurts, man. But I'm not the type of guy to say, you shouldn't do that, blah blah blah. I say, go ahead, you guys, if that's how you know how to make money, go ahead, do it. Because I'm not complaining about myself because I'm happy. I'm
sure.
getting what I and stuff. But if you guys want to do that, go ahead and do it. But it did hurt, of course. It hurt everyone, even the Japanese, because some of these guys went on tour all the time. We were day in, day out on tour doing all these matches. Our bodies were hurting, but somebody else was reaping the rewards. Hey, that's how the business goes.
Yeah, because I remember watching that All In show, and I'm sitting there going, all right, when are we going to see the Japanese? Because like I thought this was going to, because pretty sure that was around the same time where the split happened, and I feel like even then that storyline of the sort of divide in Bullet Club as well, like it was like one day it was like you guys come out, jump them, and then it was like, all right, there's no blow off. Like there was no, I didn't really feel like there was a blow off match from it. I don't know if that was like something that couldn't be agreed upon or whatever, but I feel like like in a way there was a missed opportunity there.
Yeah, I hate to talk about this kind of stuff because I'm it's not for me. It's not easy to play victim, because I grew up being, casted to the side or pushed aside because of, where you're from and the color you are.
Yeah.
But, I accepted it. I don't give a fuck about that. But at the same time, that's why we never get pushes. We never get championships or whatever. It's because of that. But I understand because in Japan, it's normal. That's normal to them. They can be completely racist in front of you, and that's normal. That's their culture. I accept it because it's their culture. You
Yeah.
know, hey, there's no word for in between. You're either black or you're white, and they
Mm.
say it in Japanese language. It hurts, but hey, you got to learn how to live with it and move forward as best as you can. And of course, that's why Tama. I think Tama is one of the could be IWGP champion. I think he can be, but
Mm.
hard for me to see it because of that type of culture. Very.
Yeah. Well, because that's the thing. Like Tama has been like one of the guys that's been so entertaining. In ring, like on a microphone. Any chance he's been given to shine, he has just like shine so bright. I've been surprised he hasn't been put in that main event spot. Like like probably shit back in like maybe 2019, like around 18, 19. I thought that was his time. He was going to elevate around then.
Like I said, you know why?
Yeah, man, and plus, you know, the wrestling business works in, you know, wonderful, mysterious ways as well. Put that on top of it, you know. But it's interesting, you know. I read a story somewhere that you and Tangaloa are related, and Hikolo are cousins, but it actually was you guys didn't know until
No,
you took a photo and put it on Facebook, and then people were like, oh, you guys finally met. It's like that's
yeah,
your cousin.
I think he came to Japan 2010, and I think 2 weeks later, one of our referees was getting married. So we got dressed up, we got to the reception, and I said, let's take a photo. We look cool, man. We took a photo, and I chucked it up on my Facebook. And the comments from all our families, were saying, "Hey, that's your family right there. Oh, same village, same, same." And then, man, from then on, blood, man. We helped each other get to where we are right now.
It's such a small world though. Like for that to sort of like, because I remember reading that going, if I ever have the opportunity to have either of you on, I wanted. That was one of the questions I wanted to ask because I found that to be just hilarious. You know, so, but you know, as we start looking to sort of wrapping up here, because we are getting that at 1 hour mark. I do want to be respectful of your time, Fale, because you are giving up your time on a Sunday night for me. You know, New Japan Tamashii, the shows that are coming up here in Australia. There's 3 shows coming up in April: Adelaide, Sydney, Melbourne. You know, New Japan now coming and breaking into the Australian, New Zealand scene, and and starting to do shows over here. What are we going to be able to expect from these shows? Like from a fan's perspective.
This is what I've been working towards for years. What I really want to do is bring everybody's level to a professional level, like New Japan. And the only way I can do that is I bring all these top level Japanese guys and match them up with the locals, because it's hard to become a top wrestler when you're only wrestling people at a low level. So you got to get those. Think of it in rugby terms. Tonga can't become a really top team, top tier nation unless they play Australia and New Zealand, right? If they're playing Samoa and Fiji, that's their level right there. If they start playing the top tiers, they're gonna have to raise their level to that level. And I'm trying to do the same thing with wrestling. So every show I do here with the Tamashii shows, I try and pick up the top guys in Australia and the guys who need to elevate their levels, and then give them these opportunities with Japanese guys and other foreigners that I bring. And like the last one we've had, I'm pretty sure everybody enjoyed it. Expect the same type of matches going forward.
Do you is the long term plan for Tamashii to be running shows like every month here in Australia? Like, is this going to be like a consistent, regular thing that we're going to be seeing long term?
That's the goal. My goal is to take Tamashii so big that Japan and America wants us to fight them.
Yeah, well, that's a great ambition and plan, But for you, like, how did you first sort of get eyes on the Australian product? Because a couple years ago, we had Will Ospreay come out. He had a match against Robbie Eagles, and that sort of catalyzed, I feel like, a lot of attention, eyes on the Australian product, especially. But for you, how did you first get introduced to the Australian scene, and obviously the New Zealand scene as well, where you have the Fale Dojo base? But how did you sort of start finding out about these scenes and finding out about some of the talent in them?
Yeah, I had no idea. Like I said, same as New Japan, I had no idea what New Japan was. But after coming back here in 2013, I get a message on Facebook or one of these things, and it was Gino Gambino, and he was over in New Zealand having a match, and I think I went along to that show, and I think he heard I was there, and he sent me a message saying, "Oh, I'm here, whatever. If you need any help hit me up. So I came to Melbourne that year to visit some family, and I remember he was from Melbourne, so I sent him a message. We sat down, had a coffee, and we talked about what's going on here, what's going on in New Zealand, and he said, "Oh man, there's promotions here and there," and in my head I'm thinking, right, how do we stop this thing?
How do
Because
you
I
capitalize?
yeah,
Catapult on it. Capitalize, yeah.
I've become a big fan of New Japan that I've just joined, and I want to show the rest of the world what New Japan can do. But throughout trying to do that, I started falling in love with the local scene and wanting to grow the local scene, and that's why everything's happening as they are.
Yeah. And yeah, we got a question here from Khalid. He wants to know what's the plans for Oceania Cup.
The dates should be announced soon, but the Oceania Cup is a New Japan show.
There you go, Kyle. Hopefully that answers it for you. Yeah, I mean, I think, by New Japan coming out and these shows and Australian talents being able to be showcased on as well, is great for the Australian industry, because I feel like we've had a lot of amazing talent out here for many years. And even now starting to see some of the New Zealand talent that we, are now being able to start seeing, from Fight TV and, independent wrestling TV and stuff like that as well. That is like, there's so much talent here that is like starting to see. And I feel like now on an international scale as well, it's now achievable. Whereas like 20 years ago, for like, what I mean, maybe a young 20-year-old, Fale being looking at breaking into the wrestling business might not have been achievable to get signed by a New Japan or a WWE, where in 2021, I mean, there's young people from New Zealand, Tonga, that can see you and go, wow, this guy is able to reach success. It is possible. They can look at a Grayson Waller in WWE and go, it's possible to get there. A young Irish guy can see Finn Balor and go, well, you know what? We now have talent there, because I feel like the international side of mainstream wrestling has really opened up over the last 10, 15 years. And we're seeing not just American showcased, and also we're not just seeing stereotypical characters of people just because they're a certain race. Like, we're not seeing like Australians coming out there going, tie me kangaroo down sport, and Finn Balor's not coming out there doing an Irish jig dressed as a leprechaun. You know what I mean? Like, they're taken seriously now, whereas I feel like maybe before it was a
Yeah,
different story.
it's true. It's true, and I just want to add that that doesn't happen because I did it. It happens because everybody did go out there and get their names out there with the New Zealand Australia brand behind them. But at the same time, it doesn't happen. It didn't happen because we went out there and did it. It was also because of the guys who are here in New Zealand, Australia, working their asses off to try and help these guys get there. You know, to what's it? Just to mention Jack Bonza with PWA, and you got Gino Gambino, and you got Robbie Eagles. All these guys, right? They're striving to take this to another level, and I'm just really happy these guys are around to give me a hand to try and get this to where it needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, like I believe like those gentlemen, I've had like conversations with Bonza and Robbie Eagles, over the years, and it's like for them, I believe it's to build a sustainable wrestling business here in Australia, where where you don't necessarily have to go over to another country to earn a full-time living in the wrestling business.
That's true.
How is it that in New Zealand though? Like, do you feel like Australia and New Zealand can be viable, that we can see people living in Australia making a full-time living in the wrestling business without having to go overseas?
I think it is because at one point, Australia and New Zealand was the biggest territory in the world, and what stopped us from trying to get it to that same level? And the same thing with like everything else. It's not easy, but it can be done. And you also have to start somewhere. So we've started it, and we're going to get it to where it needs to be.
100%. Also, I wanted to ask you about the Rogue General character. How did you come up with that? How did you develop it? And what was the inspiration for it?
Uh, Firstly, I got sick of doing nothing as the underboss, where the character of the underboss is you do nothing. You only beat the people up and you shut the fuck up and stand there and do nothing. So I got tired of doing that, and I was bored with it. And then I thought, because people on Twitter kept calling me the one bump. I mean the what do you call it? The one bump? No, the 1-star general. Because I did, and I didn't care. I thought, man, oh yeah, I like that name, general. And also I only do one bump here in most of my matches. I'll just go with the one bump general. So I made shirts of that, and people started talking shit about it. Then I thought, I think this is a good heel name. So I thought, yeah, let's go rogue, because everybody wants me to do this, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go this way, which means rogue, not conforming to the norms. And that's
Yeah.
how I came up with the name.
Oh, that's awesome. No, that's great. No, I've really enjoyed seeing the character, and especially seeing it develop. Before we do start wrapping up, I do want to ask, like, over your time, 14-year career in the wrestling business in New Japan, wrestling at a very, very high level, performing at a very high level. Has there been any interest from WWE or All Elite over the years? Have they expressed any interest, or is that something that you can't sort of mention on this podcast?
I don't want to mention names, but there were a couple of times, and I did turn it down because I'm not interested in going over there, or like I said, I'm happy trying to develop and grow this territory, which in the long run would help me more than going over there and having a short run, or being used up and spat out like most of the guys who go there.
Yeah. Yeah, or becoming the next, Funkadactyl, or you're doing the Tyrus gimmick, you know what I mean? So,
I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. But look, Kyle has got one last question. He wants to know, he goes, what started the Rogue Army?
Same thing. The rogue general doesn't listen to the norms, wants to do his own thing. And I thought it's just fitting, because I want to take over New Japan, and the only way I can do that is to start my own army. And hey, I've got 2 countries to choose from, so that's why I wanted to do it. The Rogue Army is growing. I'm still recruiting, and I'm going to take it to the next level, if not even higher than where Bullet Club was.
There you go. All right, well, it is that time for 60 seconds with Piers. How this is going to work, I've got a bunch of questions I'm going to fire off at Fale. He's got 60 seconds to answer as many as he can. Fale, you ready for me to start the clock?
Let's go.
All right, time starts now. Favorite song to sing in the car?
Cheers. Pass.
Best subject at school?
P.
What would your autobiography be called?
My Mountain.
If you could change the result of any wrestling match that you had in the history of wrestling, what would it be and why?
None, because I enjoyed every single one.
All right. What game show would you be great at?
Ninja, whatever.
What is something that you enjoy but you're embarrassed to admit that you like? Kind of like a guilty pleasure.
I'm a movie buff. Sometimes I go to movies on my own.
Home barbecue or nightclub?
Barbecue.
Gold class or VMAX?
No idea what that is.
Okay. All right. We'll move past that one. So would you rather fight 2 horse-sized ducks or 100 duck-sized horses?
Duck-sized horses.
Which board game do you always win at?
Sorry?
Which board game do you always win at?
Oh, snakes and ladders.
And last question, in 5 minutes time, you are being shipped to outer space. What 2 personal belongings do you take with you, excluding human beings?
My cigars and a meat pie.
Yeah. That's been 60 seconds with Piers, with bad luck, Fale. Man, I appreciate you coming on this podcast, man. This conversation has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it too. I have one last question that I ask everyone who comes on this podcast, and that is this. What is one question that I didn't ask you in this interview that you wish that I did ask you, and how would you have answered that question?
I'd say, how do you become a wrestler?
And how would you have answered that?
I would say, if it's what you want, go and find the best school there is, join it, and never give up.
There you go, man. And Fale, where can everyone find you on social media? Where can they go and get tickets for Tamashii? And what else would you like to plug?
At Talks Fale on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and TikTok. For the tickets, check out New Japan Tamashii handles, and you'll find the ticket links on that.
There you go, guys. Again, thank you for tuning in, guys. I appreciate everyone for tuning in live. Thank you for everyone checking this out post live. But make sure you go and check out our sponsor, Health Vape. All the details are in the description below. But again, Fale, appreciate you, man. Thank you for coming on. This has been a lot of fun. We'll take care. We'll do this again soon. Peace.